Jacob Huebert. He's the senior attorney. Liberty Justice Center is on the line with us. You can visit that website. We recommend that you do, libertyjusticecenter.org. Jacob, good morning to you.
Good morning.
How you doing this morning?
Good, thanks.
39 cents in the bank for every dollar in promised benefits in Illinois' pension system and oral arguments yesterday. Where do we stand?
Yeah, well, yesterday, the Supreme Court considered whether the recent reforms that were enacted to try to bring this pension problem under control can stand under the Illinois Constitution. The Illinois Constitution says that pension benefits can't be diminished or impaired, and so the question is, does that mean you can't make any changes at all to the system for any type of benefits? Does it mean you can't even raise the retirement age or make reduced cost of living adjustments? And the plaintiffs in this lawsuit are arguing that you can't make any changes at all. And that doesn't seem right, given that the Illinois Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court have long said that no constitutional guarantee is absolute, that the government can always make some adjustments when it's necessary to serve the public's welfare. And so that's what the state is arguing in defense of this law, and it makes sense that that's right, that the state doesn't have to just to pay these benefits that is promised exactly as it's promised forever, even if it means driving the state into the bankruptcy and fiscal and economic disaster.
Some reports, as I watched some live tweets of the proceedings yesterday and reports this morning, to indicate justices seem to be somewhat skeptical of that argument. Is that what you read from yesterday's Q&A as well?
Yeah, a couple of justices asked tough questions of the government's lawyers who were defending this law, but the plaintiff's lawyer didn't really face any tough questions at all. So, you can never know for sure from an argument where the justices are going to come down. And most of them, we should say, didn't actually say anything at all. So who knows how they'll come down, but based on the argument at least, it didn't look good for these pension reforms.
And basically the argument being that, okay, an agreement is an agreement, but it's not a suicide pact.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it, and that's the way we treat all other contracts. We have this clause in our Constitution so that government workers' pension benefits are treated like contractual benefits, like you would have with a private employer who made a deal with you. But the Constitution protects contractual benefits in general, but not absolutely, not if there's some reason why the public welfare requires that we make a change. But the plaintiffs in this lawsuit are arguing that pension benefits are different. They're unlike every other kind of contract benefit and every other kind of constitutional right, where the government just can't do anything at all.
Jacob Huebert is with us, senior attorney, Liberty Justice Center. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. Last year, Jacob, we had the Supreme Court case in Illinois where 6-1 ruling, the justices said you can't even touch promised health care benefits, not even talking about pension, but health care benefits. Is that a controlling precedent in this case, or are we talking about very separate things at this point?
Well, both of those cases, this current case and that case last year, involved the pension clause in the Illinois Constitution. But the case last year was about, well, what kinds of benefits does that cover? Does it cover just like your basic pension benefits, or does it also cover other kinds of retirement benefits like health benefits? And the court last year said, well, the scope of it is covers both regular pension benefits and health benefits. The question this time around is that guarantee of all those kinds of benefits absolute, or can there be some changes made? And they didn't rule on that last time, so that's what we're going to find out from this case.
Spending some time with Jacob Huebert. He's senior attorney, Liberty Justice Center. Visit them, libertyjusticecenter.org. All right, let's assume that this does not go the way that the citizenry of Illinois would like it to go, and the court goes, you know what? You can't make any changes. You're stuck right where you are. Where does that leave us?
Well, it leaves us in real trouble because, right now, 25 cents out of every dollar the taxpayers send to Springfield goes toward pensions. And if the state can't enact any reforms, that amount's only going to grow, and it's going to start crowding out spending on other government services that people rely on. And so you'll have lots of local governments who won't be able to reform their pension systems, and they're going to start probably saying that they need to go bankrupt, and the state will need to pass a law to allow cities to go bankrupt if they can't fix their pension systems. And, of course, a state government can't go bankrupt, and so who knows what would happen there. They can't tax their way out of this problem. We know that because they tried to do that with the 2011 tax hike, and that, of course, did not solve the problem at all. And, of course, but they may attempt to do that, and if they do, the higher taxes are going to drive even more people and more businesses out of this state, and you'll just have a worse and worse situation. So, you know, what they'll have to do in the short term is, what they need to do in any event, is put new government workers into 401k type plans instead of a pension program to at least start controlling the damage there from new government employees. But what they're going to do about the situation with all the current retirees and current employees, if they can't make any adjustments at all, I don't know. It's going to be a very difficult situation.
Jacob Huebert with us, Liberty Justice Center senior attorney. It's Ronnie and Scott on WROK talking about the Supreme Court arguments yesterday in Illinois on the pension reform law. Justice Bob Thomas, who I guess at this point in his career we can stop referring to as former Bears kicker, although I just did, asked the Solicitor General for the state a really odd question, I thought. He asked if it was incongruous for the state to argue that there was a fiscal emergency when they allowed the income tax rate to roll back as prescribed by law. That's weird. That's analogous to asking, why should the state be spending money on anything except pensions? As long as you have money and you can spend it on pensions, why spend it on anything else? That was a weird question, I thought. Yeah, and, you know, I mean, I guess some people would argue that, well, the state really isn't because, I mean, they could always just raise taxes more, so why don't you just do that? But, you know, as we talked about a minute ago, you can't just raise taxes forever and it's not necessarily going to raise you that much more money to keep raising taxes forever because it's going to drive people and businesses out of this state and take away the tax base that we have. And so the answer isn't to tax our way out of the problem. We've seen that can't work, and I would certainly hope that the justices wouldn't premise any opinion on the notion that well, you can just keep raising taxes on people until you've met your obligations. Right. I mean, that line of logic, and again, it was a question from the justice, and sometimes justices ask questions to eliminate. They don't mean what they ask. They're trying to get the information out so other justices can hear. But by that line of questioning, there's never, ever a fiscal emergency because you can always just raise more money via tax hikes, whether it be on corporations, individual sales taxes. You spend what you want, and no emergency because you can always raise taxes. Right, and that just doesn't make sense. That you have to you have no emergency until you've taken everybody's last dollar.
Now, other states have had their difficulties and continue to have their difficulties with their pension funds. Anybody doing anything out there that we could maybe try to take a page out of their book?
Yeah, I mean, other states have done some sensible pension reforms. I think Rhode Island enacted some not that long ago, even under, I think, Democratic leadership. So it can be done. It's just a question of whether the Illinois politicians are going to enact real reforms. Because, by the way, these reforms that we're arguing about right now do not fix the problem at all. They are very, very tiny, Band-Aids on a huge gaping wound, and right. We need much more serious reforms. But so if the court says we can't even do this tiny thing, I don't know how we're going to be able to do the bigger reforms that we actually need.
Well, Jacob, the diminish or impair clause, that's the hang-up here. So do we need a constitutional amendment or a constitutional convention to change that clause to allow us very clearly to make the changes needed?
We might, either the General Assembly could put a constitutional amendment like that on the ballot if it has the will to do so, or we could have a constitutional convention to fix that. And certainly a lot of people are talking about that. A lot of people who are even sympathetic to state workers and everything are starting to recognize that we have to do something. And if it means a constitutional amendment, then that's what we'll have to do.
And, Jacob, no word yet on a expected ruling date, correct?
No, I've heard some talk that some people think it may come by May. The court has considered this on an expedited basis, so we would expect maybe an expedited decision. But, of course, they can always take as long as they want, so we'll just have to wait and see.
He's Jacob Huebert. He's senior attorney, Liberty Justice Center, libertyjusticecenter.org. Jacob, thanks for taking time out of your morning for us.
Sure, thanks for having me.